Hello everyone, I'm Mandar Tosar and I would be your host for the session today. In this pandemic, most of us are working from home thanks to the technology that we could be sitting at home and yet be productive. Technology has always been a force and effort multiplier. However, as I see it, the consumption of technology is going to increase multifold in the coming years. We have with us two luminaries who share their views on the impact of technology on how we do what we do. Welcome to an IIBM original direct-to-home lecture series, Hands On, Plugs On, Minds On. Let me introduce you now our first speaker of the session, Dr. Ganesh Natrajan. He is Executive Chairman and founder of IF World, a platform for digital startups, skills, and social ventures in the country. He is also founder of Global Trial and Track and Skills Alpha and co-founder of two Indo-US joint ventures, Calzoom Advisors and the Center for AI and Advanced Analytics. Ganesh has a master's in industrial engineering from NITI in Mumbai, PhD from IIT Bombay, and advanced management program from Harvard Business School. He has received the Distinguished Alumnus Award of IIT Bombay and NITI. He has been recognized by EY and the Asia Pacific HR Forum for excellence in technology entrepreneurship and people-centric leadership. He has completed two successful CEO ventures over 25 years at Aptech and Zensar Technologies. Harvard Business School has written and teaches two case studies on Dr. Ganesh Natrajan and his success through vision communities. Ganesh has recently been elected by the shareholders of State Bank of India to serve on its board of directors. He also serves on the board of Principal Asset Management, Hinduja Global Services, LHI Digital, Asian Venture Philanthropy Network, Singapore, Systech Los Angeles, and Social Venture Partners, International, Seattle. He is chairman and board director of Social Venture Partners India and Pune City Connect. Ganesh has been chairman of Industry Association, NASSCOM and NASSCOM Foundation, and various national committees of the Confederation of Indian Industry and All India Management Association. He has also been president of the Harvard Business School Club of India. He chaired NASSCOM first US event in New York in 2016. He is keenly interested in the role of digital technologies for re-engineering processes in the corporate and social sectors and is an author of 8 books and numerous articles. Today, he is going to talk to us about future of digital supply chain for around 15 minutes, followed by 5 minutes question and answer session. Over to you, Ganesh.
Thank you very much. And Mandar, can you see and hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
very clear.
So thank you, Mandar, and thank you to the IIBM. I think it's very good that a new batch is starting in these very tough COVID times. And I look forward to interacting and answering any questions. As Mandar rightly said, I am as much a student of digital as many of you are. And I got very interested in digital transformation nearly 8 years ago when the company I was running right here in Pune, which is Zensar Technologies, we started really focusing on helping our clients in manufacturing, in retail, insurance, financial services, on how do you really leverage the benefits of digital. So let me not start from a very premature level. I'm sure most of you are aware of digital, because most of you are aware of digital because you're all digital natives. You're all young people. You grew up with mobile phones, unlike many of us who actually discovered mobile phones in the 80s and 90s. And all the elements of digital that we talk about in terms of technology, whether it's mobile, whether it is cloud computing, everything is there in front of you. I'm sure even in these COVID times, nobody suffers because we're all used to watching movies on Netflix or Amazon Prime, buying through Amazon or Flipkart or Myntra or whatever. So we are all very much used to the digital civilization. However, we must remember that not everybody is digitally literate or digitally savvy. I still remember when Prime Minister Modi first became Prime Minister of the country, one of the first things he announced was something called the National Digital Literacy Mission. In Hindi, it was the Digital Saksharta Abhiyan. And the purpose was that if you take India and you say there are 125 crore people, you're talking about maybe 200 crore families. And he said that one member of every family out of the 200 and 225 crores should be digitally literate. And it was a very visionary statement because he realized that the future was going to belong to those who were digitally literate. And I was running NASCOM Foundation at that time. And I remember we started this digital literacy mission in various cities. In the city of Pune, the NGO which I still run, along with other things, Pune City Connect, picked that up to champion it. And we, even today, out of 220,000 people, young people in slum communities, we have now covered almost 56,000 people. And our goal is to make every young person digitally literate, not people like you, but people who have come from much more underprivileged backgrounds. And I still remember the MP, even today, the Rajya Sabha MP of Pune, Srimati Vandana Chavan. Vandana and I actually got together and she said, look, I have these MP funds and what can I do in a little village very close to Malegaon that she had identified called Sudumbre. And she said, Sudumbre has 3,200 people. What can we do for them with my MP funds? So obviously I told her, Vandana, let's make this a completely digitally literate village. She said, absolutely, let's do that. And, we set up a little digital literacy center with 5 computers. And I remember after about 2-3 months, both Vandana Chavan and I went back to Sudumbre village. And we were expecting to see that, look, every one of the 600, 700 young people in the village would have got completely digitally literate. But when we went to the village, we actually found 2 or 3 young people who were just hanging around in the corridors, in the courtyards. And we said, "Aap log ne digital pad liya?" He said, "No, we don't get a chance at all." I mean, they obviously said it in Marathi. He said, "Humko chance nahi milta." So we said, "Who is using the digital center?" And we went there, and we actually found that there were 4 really elderly people. I mean, women ranging from maybe 62 to one was 80 years old, who were actually becoming digitally literate. And I remember we asked the oldest one, saying, "Tai, what are you doing?" She said, "Look, I have a son in the village, and he goes to the adjoining village, comes back and says, I have found a great boy to marry your granddaughter." And then I ask him, why is he great? And he says, oh no, he has these 2 acres of land. And she says, I immediately go to the digital literacy center and check on the Satbara extract to see how much land the person has. Imagine an 80-year-old woman having the capacity and the aptitude to be able to make that happen. We asked another woman, she must be in the mid-60s, saying, what are you doing? And she said, look, every time my husband goes to Mumbai, and he was working in Mumbai, and he comes back and he brings a sari for me and says that, look, I bought this for 800 rupees. And she says, I immediately go to Flipkart and prove to him that it cannot have cost more than 300 rupees. So we were absolutely amazed. And I remember Vandana and I were saying, here we are trying to do something for youth. And suddenly we're finding that everybody in the village wants to be digitally literate. And this is the beauty of it, that as we move along, we will find that not just in our country, but everywhere in the world, if you're not digitally savvy, there's no hope. So my purpose here is not to tell you stories about villages and digital, but if you move from what we call B2C, which is business to consumer, to the exciting world of business to corporate or business to business, you will find that the same principles apply. Because ultimately, what is digital? I mean, I can draw a technology stack for you which says cloud, social media, mobility, etc., etc. We can go further into some deeper technologies like Internet of Things, augmented reality, virtual reality, then move further into artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc. But if you bring it down to what is the benefit of digital, and that is where I think people like you who are starting your MBA should know that, it is to make 3 things happen. One is it can certainly improve productivity. And I'll talk to you about maybe one example of manufacturing and supply chain where productivity can be substantially improved by digital. Most important, it can also substantially improve the customer experience. Today, the reason we watch movies on Netflix and Amazon is because it's very personalized. We can watch it at our own time. We can watch 20% today, 40% tomorrow, the balance 40% one week later. Everything is adaptable to our time and our pace and our interest. The third is what we call business model innovation. And business model innovation that digital has done has been absolutely breathtaking. Let me give you a few examples. I mean, if you look at Facebook, if you look at Airbnb, or even if you look at Google, and I ask you what is common between all these 3, including Amazon, are products of digital. All these companies started off maybe 2000 or 2001 or much later, about the time I took over Zensar, and look where they are today. And the common factor between all these is none of them own anything. There's no asset ownership. In the good old days when I started my career after my MBA, or Uma started her career after doing her MBA, The amount of assets a company owned was a clear indicator of how strong the company was. Today, Facebook owns no assets, Amazon owns no assets, Airbnb owns no assets. What are they good at? They're creating a business model where somebody else's assets can be used much better by you, and that can make profit for them, and they can reduce the cost for you. So whether it's an Airbnb or an Oyo rooms, they're using capacity available everywhere and really making it happen. So that's the business model we talk about. Google is using your information or somebody else's data and publishing it whenever required. Facebook, of course, is just getting people to come together on a platform. And Amazon, again, is all about getting things from anywhere in the world and bringing it to your doorstep. So that's really how it works. So now let's talk about manufacturing and supply chain. All of you must have been to a factory in your lives. And a typical factory is where, if you really look at what happens in the factory, there is demand that is generated from customers. Once there is a demand, there is a production plan, there's materials planning, there's production, there's a supply chain which brings components and parts to the shop floor. And then, of course, there is a demand chain which sends it to dealers and distributors. Now, let's look at the same supply chain or the same value chain of a manufacturing company and see where all digital impacts. The first is, of course, demand. One of the most critical elements of digital today is what they call customer journey mapping. Because many of us as customers, when there were only a retail store, you went to the store, you wandered around the aisles or the shelves, found what you wanted, paid for it, and came back. Today, your quest for a new product can actually start from the comfort of your home. So your consideration can happen on your mobile phone. Your actual visit could happen to the store, could not happen to the store. You will finally maybe complete the transaction sitting in your office or sitting in your class by using your computer. So the journey can be in multiple directions. And successful 24/7 digital companies will be able to track that journey and make sure that they're able to track you every inch of the way. So that is really what this is all about. The second thing that you must remember is that when you talk about digital, now that, let's say, products have been chosen in the retail store, it has to be manufactured. So the entire aspect of design of products is now completely digital. So we all know, if any of you are engineers, you will remember a subject called computer-aided design, computer-aided manufacturing. But today it's moved to what we call manufacturing execution systems. So let's say if a complicated ventilator has to be manufactured, people don't go in and experiment on the shop floor. They do the design using computer-aided design, and then they use something called a digital twin, which will simulate the entire shop floor production, the parts, the machines required to produce that ventilator. And once they've done that, only then they decide what equipment to order, etc., etc. If you go to the shop floor itself, in many, many organizations, you will find it's a cyber physical shop floor, which means there aren't too many people there. There are all kinds of low-cost automation, robots, etc. And what these robots are doing, like I have a client in Shenzhen in China. 4 years ago, they were employing 3,000 people and 3,000 Chinese women who were assembling microprocessors on the shop floor. Recently, when I say recently, 6 months back when I went there, I found that their employment has come down to 300, but they also have 1,400 low-cost robots. So every woman is now actually using 3 robots. So most of the work is being done by them. And the woman's job is only to manage the data around the robot. So this is what we call using robotics and automation. And this is cyber physical, which is a combination of cyber or robotics and physical or people getting involved. Go further. If you look at materials, for instance, we're all familiar about stores and warehouses. But today's warehouses, if you go to an Amazon warehouse anywhere in the world, including near Mumbai, you will find it's fully automated. The picking is done by robots. Everything is done. Even the computer vision is used to ensure that the right part is being picked. So from the control tower, they can guide them to the right part because you're augmenting the shelf and really looking at each part by part. And then, of course, there's virtual reality to enable you to see other stuff. And I'll come back to that at the end. So all the warehousing, all the movement of material, all the production of the shop floor is done by a combination of robots and people. If you move further from there, and let's say you do supply chain, I'll give you an example. Right here in Pune, there's a company called Kirloskar Oil Engines Limited. Kirloskar Oil Engines, as the name suggests, makes fairly large oil engines. And every oil engine for the last 2 years that has been shipped out of the Kirloskar factories are monitored by a control tower in Khadki, in Pune. And from there, every oil engine anywhere in the world, anywhere in the country, is actually sending back information using what they call IoT sensors. And these sensors are sending back, okay, what is the oil level, what should be done, etc. And the minute some, let's say, oil refilling has to be done, automatically an SMS or a WhatsApp message will go to the maintenance man there, and he will be told that, look, within the next 24 hours, make sure oil is filled. So the entire process is sensed, is controlled, it's automated, and the feedback response is sent. That's how supply chains work today. So today there are things called, which I won't get into because it's too complicated. There are things people use called cognitive supply chains, which is using artificial intelligence to actually predict when material will run out and the ordering is placed automatically. You're using it to actually prescribe, saying, as I mentioned in the oil case, when oil should be done. So this whole aspect of using artificial intelligence and machine learning to do what is called predictive and prescriptive analytics is what we are seeing here today. So if you put all this together, you will find that in every segment of manufacturing and supply chain, so many of these technologies are being used. That's why I said, the core of digital is what we used to call SMAC, social, mobility, analytics, and cloud. But it's now gone much more towards edge technologies like IoT, like augmented reality. And it's gone completely towards automating everything possible. And the good news is that these supply chains, which are digitally enabled, will be valid for manufacturing, will be valid for retail, is valid for insurance. For instance, your parents used to buy life insurance policies and pay premiums every year. Today, the almost 25% of the insurance market is what is called usage-based insurance. For instance, if you think that you're going to go to your campus one day and then you find that, look, there's a lot of traffic, you could actually take an insurance policy for 45 minutes, saying if something happens to my two-wheeler, here's the premium. And at the end of 45 minutes, it lapses. So all this is very incident-based, usage-based insurance. Healthcare, for instance. I was just part of a big hackathon which was done by the Ministry of IT and the government of Estonia, where we were actually looking at designs where for COVID patients, a person doesn't have to go in at all. It can be done by a robot, the temperature testing, the swab testing, etc. Everything can be done by low-cost robotics. So that's the point I'm making. And finally, on virtual reality, if you come to one of our skills lighthouses right here in Pune, in Bibbewadi or in Barje or in Hadapsar, you'll find we're using augmented reality to train young slum children on how to be medical assistants. Because it's very difficult for somebody to enter the operating theater of a Jahangir hospital. But by virtual reality, they can actually be there without being there. And that's the benefit. So I'll stop here by saying that, look, digital is clearly the most exciting thing that's happened on the planet. Today with COVID, all of us are using technologies like the one we are using, but that's not digital. So digital is way beyond video conferencing. It's even beyond buying on Amazon and using an Ola or an Airbnb. It is actually reimagining how everything will work in the future. Manufacturing, retail, supply chains, our own lives, and making sure that we are prepared as young MBAs when we pass out. Our companies are prepared, and that is where our role as practitioners and consultants can come in. And we can help to transform the world for digital. So thank you very much for listening to me. Very happy to answer any questions now, or I'll also be here till the end. We can answer questions later also. Mandar, over to you.
Thank you. So there are a couple of questions from the student. I'll read them in the order that I've received. Is there a particular technology that students should learn to make their career in supply chain? A particular, from student point of view.
No, I think when you say technology, see, if you know, there are a lot of these large ERPs like Oracle, SAP, which manage the entire supply chain. I did use the word cognitive because a lot of this in terms of supply chain planning, particularly global supply chains, will be managed through artificial intelligence, will be managed through what is called social listening. So I think understanding AI, understanding analytics is certainly something that will help you, not only in supply chain, but literally in every aspect of it.
There's another question. What would be the impact of digitization on the supply chain of unorganized sector?
That's actually a very good question because one of the things I'm doing some work with the Ministry of IT on is, because all of us know that, look, there are so many SMEs, small and medium enterprises in our country. And unfortunately, because of COVID, the SMEs are going to be impacted much more than the large companies. Large companies have lots of cash and they've kind of saved up enough. So Bajaj Auto, which has, let's say, 60% exports, is not going to be affected as much as somebody who's just an ancillary to Kirloskars. So there, I think what we are looking at is what we call the cluster approach. Like even in Pune, for instance, there's the auto cluster that is managed by the Maratha Chamber of Commerce. And basically the advantage of the cluster is that the SMEs can combine forces and maybe invest in technology together. I mean, if you need industrial strength Wi-Fi, you can do it across the entire maybe Chakan sector or whatever. So I think that's really what you want to see. So you will find that SME adoption of digital, which is what they call smart manufacturing or Industry 4.0, is slower in India than it is in other parts. But it will pick up as people start collaborating and investing in technology together, and that will make the change as we go forward.
Now, the next question kind of aligned to the earlier question and your response. Can people who are not digitally literate participate in supply chain led by digital technologies?
I think first of all, you just assume that nobody can afford to be digitally illiterate, especially people who are going to work in large organizations, etc. I mean, if you go to the GE plant in Chakan, for instance, which is close to here, you will find that there are very few people on the shop floor. So now they're selling that factory, but it was a completely end-to-end automated plant. And so people who work in those areas will have to really understand digital extremely well. And as I mentioned earlier, whether you join a financial services company, a consulting company, a healthcare company, or an insurance or manufacturing company, digital is essential. So don't even assume that somebody will not know digital. The differentiator between somebody who's a very successful professional and somebody who's just ordinary is the depth of digital knowledge you have, and how can you practically put that to work to make it happen.
Right. And one last question, and we'll stop there because we are limited by time. What is supply chain 4.0, and when most of India would be ready for that?
Well, I mean, somebody hasn't defined a supply chain 4.0 yet, but if you ask me, anything to do with 4.0 is a combination of using automation and artificial intelligence. So when I use the word cognitive supply chain, as I said, it is almost like predicting the performance of the supply chain across countries, across places, optimizing inventory. How much do you store in each warehouse and make that happen? So I think that's the supply chain. In fact, there is a lovely company called Rivigo in Delhi. Rivigo was set up by two McKinsey consultants, and what Deepak Garg and his partner do, I mean, they've actually reimagined the entire delivery chain. I mean, as you know, if you imagine a truck driver, we always think of a truck driver who maybe starts from Jamshedpur in Bihar and who was driving his truck for 14 days to get it to Bombay. And they said that, look, let's create a model by which no driver ever drives more than 300 kilometers. So literally they've set up like a relay system, which is all managed by a control tower in Gurgaon. And if somebody is driving from, let's say, Ratlam to Indore, he can actually hand over the truck, drive another truck back from Indore to Ratlam. So he's back home in Ratlam, sleeping safely in his house at night. And somebody else, like a relay race, picks up the trucks and takes across. So they've kind of optimized this entire route transportation model. And it's one of the best supply chain planning models I've seen. So like this, there are hundreds of examples. But what is, as I said earlier, is you have to reimagine what you're out to do. If it's delivering goods, can it be done more effectively, more intelligently, rather than just having some people killing themselves to deliver goods and products? So I think that is the future of supply chains.
Thank you, Ganesh, for enlightening us about the role of digital technologies in the future of supply chain. Now we'll move to the next part of the session. We have Dr. Uma Ganesh as our second speaker today. She is going to share her views on leadership in the age of artificial intelligence. She will be talking to us on the subject for 15 minutes, followed by 5 minutes of question and answer session. Uma Ganesh has over 3 decades of success in corporate and entrepreneurial ventures covering manufacturing, media, banking, and IT sectors. Uma has had in-depth exposure to functional areas such as marketing, product management, finance, operations through CXO CEO positions, with large organizations having their footprint in India and global markets. Her last corporate assignment was with HSBC as their Chief Corporate Development Officer for its global resourcing business, and previously she has been associated with Z Education, Aptech, NIT, Fiberglass, Pinkington, and Crompton Greaves. Over the last decade, Uma has turned an entrepreneur, founding Global Talent Track focused on skills development for the digital area, Center for Artificial Intelligence and Advanced Analytics, Kalzum Advisors, and Skills Alpha, the digital platform for talent development. One of the noteworthy initiatives is a 5F World Private Limited, co-founded with Dr. Ganesh Natrajan, which is focused on consulting for digital transformation and investment in digital startups. I will get out of your way now so that you can hear Dr. Ganesh, Uma Ganesh. Over to you, ma'am. Ma'am, we are not able to hear you. Probably will have to unmute yourself.
Are you able to hear me now? Yeah, okay. Thank you, Mandar, for that generous introduction. I'm happy to be here with all of you, especially to interact and welcome students of MBA who are
Uma,
I think I'm having some problem with the video feed.
okay.
I don't know what's happening here. So long as you can hear me, maybe the video feed will come back.
We can leave.
So, all right, okay. So as I was saying, I'm happy to be here with all of you, particularly to welcome and interact with the students of MBA, the first year students, who are trying to explore what this whole gamut of management is going to be. And in that context, you have asked me to speak on an exciting topic of leadership in the era of artificial intelligence. So before I talk about leadership, I want to spend a few minutes talking about artificial intelligence. What is artificial intelligence, or how do we experience artificial intelligence? So when I have interacted with other schools and students like yourselves, often whenever I ask this question, what do you think AI is? How do you experience AI? They come up with some interesting examples. They would say automated cars. That is a good example of how AI can be experienced. Or someone else would say Siri is a good example. And then drones, they would say that is an example where AI has been embedded. So what I want all of us to bear in mind is that some of these examples are, yes, correct examples. And we do experience AI. It's not something that is futuristic, but we are already experiencing AI in different ways, whether it is in the context of business or even in the context of ticket booking, in the context of course, war-related operations. You heard a little while ago Ganesh speak about supply chain. In all of these areas and many more, we have already begun to experience AI. But when we say we are experiencing AI, we need to be clear what is AI and what is AI actually doing to business so that we can really understand how leadership style needs to evolve and what kind of leadership will work in tomorrow's context when AI will become more and more of a very important phenomenon in the way businesses will run. So artificial intelligence is nothing but intelligence which is provided. So this intelligence is artificially created and provided. And who creates this artificial intelligence? Of course, it is the human minds. So fundamentally, it's the human minds who engineer this intelligence and make that intelligence available in the context of some problem to be solved, or some decision to be taken, or to integrate that with other components of knowledge which come together for the purpose of taking a decision or making a change. So maybe this definition, what I gave you, is a little complicated, but let me tell you a little differently to make you understand what AI is by highlighting what AI is not. Very often many of us get worried about AI is really going to take away the human beings from where they are. Maybe their roles are going to disappear, jobs are going to be disappearing. These are things that we keep hearing from time to time. But we must remember one thing: when wheels were first invented by man, there would have been fear. Over the years, many jobs have gone away, many jobs have got transformed, and especially because of technology, things have got transformed from time to time. Take a simple example like communication. When we wanted to send out a communication from one place to the other, in the ancient times, we used doves, then we had runners, then we had the horse carriages, then we had town criers who would go into the town and bring together all people residing in the town, and beating the drum, they would give out the communication, and so on and so forth. Later, with the introduction of technology called telegram, instantaneously message could be communicated from one location to the other. Thereafter, we have seen the role of journalists, the newspapers, radio, television, and now lately we are seeing that through mobile phone we are able to extract whatever news we want, global or local news, the way we want at the time we want. So what are we here? What are we getting to understand from this example that I just painted for you? Is that the need for communication has remained over the years, over the generations. In fact, the need for communication has increased dramatically. It's just that the mode of communication has changed, and with the availability of technology, the means of communication has become much, much more easier, and the way we are able to consume the news, the information has become very, very personalized and customized. So very similar to that, when we add this component called artificial intelligence into the context of how decisions are made, how the problems are being solved, how the customer needs could be addressed, it only enables us to do things better. And that is really the way we need to understand artificial intelligence. And how does it do all of this? It does all of this because we are creating that tool and we are training that tool to become smarter, to be able to crunch a whole lot of data. And using that data, this tool this tool gets to become intelligent. That's why we are saying it's artificially made intelligent, because anything mechanical, anything which is inanimate cannot be naturally intelligent. It is the intelligence of the human being which is passed on to this tool, and we are training that tool to interpret that data, to be able to predict a situation, and through variety of scenarios it is able to present to us, we are able to take better decisions. That is how artificial intelligence needs to be understood, and it is not something that is going to overpower us and make our life miserable. It is here to make our life better, and that is where the smartness of young people like all of you, when you're entering into the industry and when you are looking at becoming leaders in your own right, you are going to now look at how am I going to use this power of AI for betterment of my business. So I hope you are now clear how the definition of AI should be looked at, and how AI can actually enable you to become better leaders and to enable you to transform your businesses. So before we now move on to looking at leadership itself, how it could get transformed with AI, let me just spend a few minutes to get you to understand that AI, in the context of business or leadership, can provide the power of predictive capabilities. It can enable in multitasking, in refining human judgment, and so on. And how does it do all of this? Let me give you some examples. See, for instance, when you are wanting to buy some tickets, okay? So you are going on to the portal. Let's say you're going to Indigo Airlines, and you're saying, okay, I want to fly from Pune to Delhi. So when you state that you want to go from Pune to Delhi, it gives you 3 options on a particular date that you want to travel. And you quickly decide that, these 3 options are not going to work for me. So it pops up the 4th option, which is much cheaper, and maybe it's on another date, the date that you had not originally considered. That is where we are seeing AI is coming in. So what we need to understand is, it's not just a sensor itself. It is not just the technology itself. It is when the technology or the sensor or the robots are able to give you inputs in such a way that you can make decisions, or you can make the problem, you can find the solution for a problem. So this is how we need to think about leadership and the decision making process, which is an important component of leadership. So leadership has got decision making. Leadership also means that you are there to achieve a particular objective. You are assigned a particular job, an assignment. Could be managing a business, managing a small team. It may be just, you have been given a target and you have to go and sell this, and you are made a leader for the territory. So do not think about leadership as only, the role of a CEO. Leadership is something that you are going to be experiencing from the time you start working, and you are going to be able to establish your leadership style and prove to the organization and to your peers that you are a leader in whatever work or assignment that you are given, by way of how you are going to be able to achieve the goals that are assigned to you. So in any one of these areas, when you are trying to get things going, what is important is for you to remember that in tomorrow's time, there is going to be more and more of a need to deal with a whole lot of data. See, now we are seeing that there is a lot of interaction we are having through mobile phone. We are interacting with computers. We are sharing a whole lot of data through social media. Now, all of these data, when it is available and we can bring it together and we can analyze it better, it gives you a whole range of capabilities. So that is going to be one of the important characteristics of a leader, which is, in order for you to achieve the goals that you have taken up for yourself at any level, it is the ability to deal with that data, and it is the ability to define what is the kind of model that I want, wherein I can bring together data from multiple sources in a manner that I can put it to use for my decision making. So I gave you earlier the example of Indigo. Now, if the goal of Indigo, the CEO of Indigo or the marketing manager of Indigo wants to maximize the number of customers and they want to maximize revenues. So if that is their goal, unless and until they capture the data of the customer and they know that, previously when you came to the same site, you looked for the cheapest option, and instead of flying to Delhi, you were okay over the weekend to try to fly to Dharamshala, and they gave you that option, and then the system remembers that, and now the system prompts you to think about these options and thereby get your business. That is a goal that the CEO or the marketing manager wants to achieve. And if you want to achieve that goal, and that is this month's target I have to achieve, then I need to be able to define what are the sources of data, in what formats the data should come through. And there are, of course, specialists who can create the framework for giving these multiple options and see that the customer is tapped to give you business. So like this, whether you're interacting with Amazon, with Flipkart, I mean, these are some of the retail experiences many of us have been going through every day. So you would be able to relate to these. So that is the first aspect of leadership, which is how do I learn to work with data? How do I build appropriate models? And how do I use it for predictive capabilities? And therefore, how can I make better decisions? Because what is going to happen is, like we are seeing today, whoever predicted that all the businesses are going to be in a slowdown mode and that we are all going to be affected by COVID. So in these 3 months, many businesses are had to shut shops. Many businesses have now opened up, and now they are looking at what is it that they can do differently. So this is where innovation and the ability to think differently is going to will continue to remain very, very important, whether it is COVID time or not, because of the digital capabilities. because of the fact that data will be available, we can innovate and come up with new products from time to time. You see, many restaurants, they were forced to shut down because of the lockdown situation. But some of the restaurants actually decided to reach out to their customers. And this is because they have maintained their database and they innovated overnight. And I do not know how many of you are from Pune, but in Pune, some of the five-star hotels like Hyatt and I think it was Taj, who decided that they will do home delivery of food and give you a five-star hotel experience in your home. This is way before many of them started thinking about takeouts. This was a takeout of a different kind that the hotels like the Hyatt or the Taj decided to do. So this is where innovation is important, and it's not only coming up with the idea, but if this idea has to work, then you need to have proper data, and AI is going to enable you by giving you all of the scenarios, and therefore for the leader to quickly think on his or her own feet and say, okay, this is how I'm going to therefore innovate and do things differently and still achieve my goals or surpass my goals. That is how leaders will have to think. Another dimension that leaders need to keep in mind all the time is that the journeys that the customers go through, journeys that the employees go through. When I say journeys, there are different steps. That's what I mean by journeys. So for instance, as a customer, first we do research, then we go and check out, then we want to sample, then we want to ask some people, what do you think? Did you like the product? Did you like that service? Then you have bought it once, then the second time, for you to buy it, you are relying back on your experience, and so on and so forth. So this is what we are seeing is a customer's journey. Like that, there can be employee journey, the vendor's journey. In all of these journeys, it is possible for us to capture the data and for us to put in AI elements. And leaders are the ones who are able to constantly look at how the journeys are getting refined, how the journeys have to be redesigned from time to time so that you are there with the customer at every juncture, wherever the customer is thinking or is not even thinking about your product, you need to be there. So design thinking is what it is called. And this is a specialist capability, specialist skill that you need to develop, because design thinking in every aspect of the business, every aspect of your functioning will enable you to become better and better as you go along. So, if when you really talk about leaders who will have to bring together all of these capabilities, how do you get there and what are the specific skills you need to develop to become successful, to remain successful? So I will just take another minute or two and end my session. What are those critical skills of tomorrow's for the leaders to be successful in the era of AI? Yes, you need to develop problem solving skills. You need to develop analytical skills. You need to develop presentation skills. And then, of course, this whole art of storytelling, which is a new skill, you need to consciously develop this capability as well, because articulation is going to become extremely important. You need to be able to paint different scenarios to your teams, to your customers, to your shareholders, and you also need to be able to pick some key insights from these stories which are narrated to you. And last but not the least is what Ganesh said earlier, which is to develop specialist capabilities in digital, and digital technologies will keep changing. For AI, today there are n number of tools. Tomorrow there will be new tools, further tools that will keep coming up. So do not worry about the underlying technologies, but do develop an appreciation of what technologies can help you, are coming into the context of digital marketing, customer proximity, how can I improve? So these are areas where we need to be constantly be on the lookout for all of these technologies and constantly keep updating yourself on the technologies apart from all the soft skills that I mentioned. Those are going to be critical for you to become a successful leader in the context of AI, which is going to take a center stage in the business. Thank you very much. Let me stop on that note, and over to you, Mandar, for any questions that you may have.
There are many questions. Seems like AI has been a favorite topic here, but we'll take only a couple of them. The first one is, what would be the role of EQ at the workplace where decisions are being made by AI?
That's a wonderful question. I would like to remind you about what I started off by saying, that AI is not something that is going to overpower human beings. It is human beings which are going to define how AI should function and how smart AI can be. Therefore, we require EQ as much as we need the presence of AI. These for AI to be successful, we require both EQ and IQ.
Okay. The next question is, how to configure AI system to respond to unforeseen situations in business? Because you mentioned AI takes data from what has already happened. So how do we configure the system to respond to the situations of the future?
There are concepts of machine learning and deep learning. So there are various models that are available. So firstly, most organizations, we do not have the culture or the legacy of collecting data in a clean manner. Once we start developing that sort of a mental capability to start the mindset, to start building the repository of data, and thereafter there are different frameworks available, models available, based on what is a problem statement that you have in front of you. For example, if you are running a hospital and you want to increase the utilization of the beds available. So if that is a question that you put in, then what are the parameters? What are the kind of patients you're addressing? What are the kind of illnesses they come in with? How many days do they spend in the hospital? What kind of treatments they undergo? If you say these are the 4 or 5 criteria which will determine how I can maximize the capacity utilization in my hospital, then using that data, you can come up with a model, and the model will throw up multiple scenarios which will enable you to take decision making.
We'll have one last question and we'll stop there. You talked about the evolution of technology. You gave the example of communication. So should we focus on AI or should we see beyond that to become more productive and kind of?
See, first of all, what is important is for us to not get overpowered by AI. We need to, first of all, strengthen our understanding about the domain. If you want to be good in marketing, for instance, you need to have sound foundation in marketing, a sound foundation in finance. So those principles are never going to go, whether it's finance or manufacturing or supply chain or marketing. First, have your foundation absolutely thorough in these subjects. Then comes the understanding about technologies. As I said earlier, technologies will be flavor of the year, and AI is here to stay. AI will be powered by various kinds of technologies from time to time. So do not worry about those. Whatever is the technology which is most appropriate based on number of things, which I'm not going to have time here to cover. But there are number of underlying technologies. You need to learn Python or you need to learn R if you want to really look at how data could be engineered first. And then you use Tableau for visualization. And there are a whole range of other BI tools that we can use. And as I said earlier, there are specialists who can help you do all of this. What is important for you as a leader is to envision what is it that I want to accomplish, what is a problem statement that I can come up with efficiently so that it articulates clearly that this is the solution I'm looking for, or these are the options, scenarios that I'm looking for. And then we can work with specialists to design that model to come up with possible options and solutions.
Thank you, Dr. Uma, for sharing your views and demystifying our concepts about AI at the workplace. I'm sure students have gained a lot and they are now confident about leading in the AI-based corporate world. And I thank all students for being such a lovely audience and asking interesting questions. Have a good day. Thank you all.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to interact with all of you, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this induction program. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.